Since Donald Trump won the American election in November, the subject of tariffs has reverberated around the world. What's Trump going to do about tariffs? And what impact is that going to have on world trade? I wanted to find someone that I could ask about this, someone who had real insight into the situation and also the personality involved. David Walker has occupied some of the most senior financial roles and non-political roles within the US government. From 1998 to 2008, he was the Comptroller General of the United States and head of the US Government Accountability Office. He was responsible for overseeing government spending, auditing federal programs, and ensuring accountability across federal agencies. He's well known for his efforts to highlight the growing national debt problem and the long-term fiscal challenges facing the United States. He's also an expert on everything to do with US politics and finance. And today, he's the guest on our show.
It's great to talk to you, David. I've been reading this.
That looks familiar, Philip.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating as an insight into the US, both past, present, and also futures. I'm a director of a manufacturing business in the UK. There's one particular aspect of your book, and there's one particular topic that I'd like to talk to you about, certainly to begin with, which is tariffs and trade. Because obviously, your incoming president has quite a lot to say on that subject. And you are our biggest trading partner, both for imports and exports. We're quite important to the US as well. I think we rank number 5 for exports and number 7 for imports to you guys as well. So the question is, what do you think Donald Trump is going to do on tariffs? And what impact do you think that's going to have both on the US and on your trading partners?
All right, Philip. Well, first, let's do a little bit of history here, and then I'll answer your question. The United States, up until the late 1800s, actually funded the federal government primarily through tariffs. And we needed a constitutional amendment in order to be able to impose an income tax on the American people. And that didn't come until 1913. And so, and with that, among other things, the federal government has grown from 2.5% of our economy to almost 25% and growing. So Trump has talked about tariffs. Part of that is his desire to try to be able to promote free and fair trade. Part of that is also his desire to try to be able to help American workers. Okay. In my opinion, it's totally infeasible for us to go back to where we're funding the federal government based on tariffs. In my opinion, tariffs are appropriate in targeted circumstances when there is an unfair trading practice. So you do it on a targeted and hopefully a temporary basis in order to try to be able to right a wrong. I do not, and I think that in the case of President-elect Trump, a lot of times he'll end up using issues like this in order to try to be able to promote behavioral changes on behalf of other nations, that go beyond trade issues. I mean, for example, we've got a real problem with our southern border. Mexico needs to be a lot more cooperative with regard to stemming the flow of illegal immigrants and drugs and other types of activities across our border. And Trump's the kind of person who might end up talking about tariffs, because that gets people attention, right? But it may not ever have to impose those tariffs because he reaches a deal. He's a deal maker, right? So I think that he will use the tariff, threat, but in circumstances he feels are appropriate. But I don't think it'll be implemented nearly to the extent that sometimes he talks about.
Okay.
And then the real question is, who bears the cost, right?
Mm.
And it really depends. I mean, it depends upon, whether or not there's another source. for the good. Okay, it depends upon how much of the tariffs get absorbed by, the companies, to reduce their profit margins rather than increase their price. So it's a lot more complicated issue than most people want to give it a credit for.
Yes. And reading your book, one of the things you realize is that, I mean, America is the world's biggest trading nation. And
And
actually,
China's pretty close, but but they're more
yeah,
exporters than importers. Yeah.
yeah. But you seem to, what you export and what you import in a lot of cases are quite similar. And it seems to be more about choice. You know, you export a lot of cars, you import a lot of cars. It seems to be more about giving your people choice as to what they buy rather than your inability to manufacture automobiles in America.
Well, there's a couple things. One, America is big on choice. America is big on competition. All right. And those are two important elements of freedom, right? Which we're obviously very big on, right? Um, and you know, we don't necessarily have the best in everything, right? I mean, I look at my household, all right. Um, we have three cars. All of them are from foreign manufacturers. Okay. I have a Porsche. I have a Mini, which is BMW. Okay. And my
Mm.
wife has a RAV4, which is Japan. And we've owned American cars. I'll own American cars, but you want what you think makes the most sense for you in your own circumstances in life.
Yeah, yeah. So really then, summarizing what you think is President Trump's approach to trade and tariffs. He supports trade which he sees as fair. Is that?
Yeah, he supports free and fair trade, okay? But he's willing to use tariffs to rectify what he deems to be a
Mm.
wrong.
Yeah.
Uh, when he thinks it's not free and fair trade, or where he thinks it's harming U.S. industries, if you will, but in large part because of unfair
Mm.
trade practices. But he's also willing to use the threat of tariffs to try to rectify other wrongs that may not have anything to do with trade, like, for example, the southern border, like, for
Mm.
example, and this tangentially, the Panama Canal. All right. I mean, he thinks we're not being treated fairly with regard to the Panama Canal, especially since we gave it to them and didn't get any money for it. All right. And then you end up getting gouged for the fees that you have to pay to go through it. And he's
Yes.
also concerned about who's running it, but that's a different issue.
Yes. Okay. So the advantage the UK has then, I mean, we've probably got a similar cost base to the US. Our
Yeah.
price is probably similar to yours. So we're not going to be seen as an unfair trade participant.
Overall, no. Right. Overall, no. But there are parts of our economy that we don't have adequate production capacity.
Mm.
And there are issues that are being raised. Like, for example, Nippon wants to buy U.S. steel. And that's a very controversial thing. I mean, on one hand, you'd say, what's the problem with Japan? They're a great ally, just like the UK is a great ally, right? So, I mean, we shouldn't be as tough on Japan or the UK with regard to investing in the United States, especially if they're willing to bring several $billion worth of new investment to modernize those facilities. That's actually trying to help employment, not to hurt employment. So,
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the other dimension here is the foreign direct investment, because we've got a massive amount of our foreign direct investment in the US and the other way around, you have in the UK as well. I think it's about $500 billion one way and 700 billion the other. So actually, we've got a pretty big stake in each other's economies.
and we're allies, and we ought to be working together in many regards. I mean, it shouldn't be treated the same as, for example, there's increasing concern in the United States with China's acquisition of agricultural property, in many cases
Mm.
close to military bases. Well, that's totally different than if it was UK, right? Or if it was Japan.
Yeah. And last time around, President Trump showed a willingness, particularly in relation to China, to try and put a brake on what he saw as unfair imports or unfairly priced imports. And I get the point with Mexico as well, because it's low cost American companies can't compete with it.
Well, and the other problem is you have China, for example, trying to do things in Mexico and then send it into the United States using Mexico basically as cover, for what they're doing. Yeah.
I mean, one question that does kind of spring to my mind about all of this, particularly with Mexico and these kind of low cost imports and low value jobs. There's talk about the flight of jobs out of the US, but are those the kind of jobs you really want in your economy?
Look, we need to do a strategic human capital plan to determine what needs to be done with regard to our immigration policy, because we're in a global Olympics. We're competing for talent on a global basis. Our immigration laws have to be revised. We need immigration because we only have 1.62 children per female now. You need 2.1 for maintaining your population. So we need, but we need to dramatically reform our immigration laws to be able to base on what makes sense in a global economic contest.
Okay.
It's good to be with you.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and thank you again for this, because this has been really exciting to read.
Check out American2040.com. It has global implications. Thank you so much, Philip.